Hello, welcome everyone to this presentation. I am MOMEN. Today I will be presenting our paper titled NudgeCred. In this paper, we discuss the application of nudging in the context of information credibility judgment on social platforms. Modern news ecosystem has brought about many challenges, including the emergence of misinformation. Reports show that widespread misinformation make it harder for people to distinguish between basic facts and false information. Information overload on social media makes it even more difficult to distinguish false stories from real ones. Therefore, questions remain: how can system developers assist users on social platforms in identifying information quality through design? We use the theory of nudging from behavioral economics research to answer this question. The theory of nudging was developed by two economists, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. They developed this idea of nudging as a way to change people's behavior in a decision-making process by altering how options are presented to them. See the example here that nudges people to take the stairs instead of an elevator. Here it applies an arrow key indicating calorie burning. Similar to this idea, we developed NudgeCred to provide users guidance on information credibility on Twitter. As we will show in this promo video, NudgeCred supports three types of nudges. The first one is the reliable nudge with the green background shown in here. In addition, a second type of nudge is unreliable nudge, where it reduces the opacity of a news tweet from non-mainstream sources. A third type of nudge we apply on mainstream news tweets is questionable nudge, which changes the background of those tweets to yellow. To design a taxonomy of reliability of nudges, we use the idea of heuristics from communication literature, which suggests that people use some details about the appearance of the content to identify the credibility of them. Specifically, we employ two such heuristics in our design. The first one is the authority heuristics, and the second one is the bandwagon heuristic. We use authority heuristic to differentiate between mainstream and non-mainstream information source. InfoWars, Breitbart are examples of non-mainstream sources. NudgeCred alters the opacity of content from such non-mainstream sources and show a tooltip explaining the reasons behind its unreliability. In this example, the rationale is that Breitbart is a partisan source. On the other hand, NudgeCred further divides information from mainstream sources like The Economist or Fox News by applying a second heuristic called bandwagon heuristic. This bandwagon heuristic relies on other users' perception of a content. In our case, we specifically ask if other users replied to a tweet with questions. If there are tweets with questions, then we tag them as questionable and change the background color to yellow or orangish yellow. If there are no replies with the question, we tag those tweets as reliable and change the background color of such reliable tweets to green. Similar to unreliable nudge, NudgeCred offers a tooltip with the rationale behind both reliable and questionable categorization. For questionable one, it shows the first reply with the question. Using our design of NudgeCred, we conducted two studies. In the first one, we examined the effectiveness of nudges in a control setting. Specifically, we asked two types of research questions. First being, how does these nudges affect users' credibility perception of each type of nudged item? In the second one, we examine if there are behavioral conformers like users' partisanship, political cynicism, and media skepticism that may affect the impact of nudges. To answer these research questions, we conducted a large-scale survey study. We recruited 430 U.S. nationally representative participants through Qualtrics for our study. Participants were divided into groups of treatment and control, where a treatment group were shown a simulated Twitter feed with nudges, whereas control group didn't see any kind of nudges. For each tweet, we measured users' perceived credibility using standard metrics from communication literature. Analyzing participants' perceived credibility, we found that NudgeCred increased users' perception of credibility of reliable items, whereas we found it decreased their perceived credibility of questionable and unreliable items. Furthermore, applying several regression models on the data, we found no significant effect of users' partisanship, political cynicism, and media skepticism on the perception changes due to nudges. We encourage you to look into the details inside the paper. To better understand users' experience with the tool in an ecologically valid setting, we conducted another interview study. In this second study, we asked users to use the NudgeCred as a Chrome extension for 5 days on their real Twitter feed. We recruited 12 participants who followed our target news media, that is mainstream and non-mainstream news sources. After using the extension for 5 days, we invited these participants to a semi-structured interview. Analyzing users' interviews, we found that NudgeCred helped users consuming news content in a more conscious manner. By conscious manner, what we mean here is that people realized or learned some new concepts around nudged news items. For example, one user realized that questionable nudges indicated that content might be controversial or containing incorrect facts. Similarly, another user found that by seeing too many questionable nudges from NPR, this person realized that NPR produced more opinionated content than they realized before. Through this realization, users can better parse through content on Twitter. In addition, users also had some concerns regarding the use of heuristics in design of nudges. For one user mentioned that bandwagon heuristic could be problematic in application because this heuristic rely on other users. On Twitter, users following differ between mainstream and non-mainstream news sources, and even within mainstream sources there are differences. Take the example of New York Times. It has a large following by skeptical readers, whereas Fox News is not being followed by many skeptical readers. Therefore, bandwagon heuristic could negatively affect content from New York Times. Besides, there is also one issue due to the absence of nudges. As one of the users pointed out here, they thought that content that did not have any kind of nudges were valid. Therefore, while use of heuristic in designing nudges could be useful, there is also need for caution in selection of such heuristics. We discussed the implication of these results in the paper. In practice, we are pleased to see that social media sites like Twitter are increasingly adopting the idea of labeling like nudges instead of other policies like withholding certain content from its audience. Such mechanisms have the potential to help users identify content reliability without restraining their autonomy. Overall, in this work, we present effectiveness of nudge-like design cues to help users assess content reliability on social media. We also provide guidance on design considerations. In addition, future research can delve into applying other nudging method instead of warning, and other heuristics in developing nudges. Thank you for coming to this presentation. Feel free to reach out to me or other authors if you have further questions.